The days blurred together in the small town of Oregon where I had once envisioned a life filled with laughter and warmth. Now, they felt like an endless cycle of muted colors and hollow echoes. It had been months since my husband passed away, leaving behind a gaping hole in our lives. My stepson, Ethan, seemed to drift further away from me with each passing day, caught in his own grief while I grappled with mine. The house felt too quiet, its walls heavy with memories that lingered like ghosts. I spent most afternoons at the local market, wandering through aisles of fresh produce and homemade goods. The vibrant colors of the fruits and vegetables provided a stark contrast to the dull ache in my heart. I often ran into familiar faces, neighbors who offered polite smiles but never delved deeper into my sorrow. They didn't know what it was like to lose a partner and step into the role of a mother figure when everything had changed overnight. One particular afternoon, while selecting ripe tomatoes, I caught sight of Ethan across the aisle. He stood there, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, staring at a display of flowers as if they held some secret he couldn't grasp. I wanted to reach out to him, to bridge the widening gap between us, but hesitation held me back. What could I say? "How are you?" felt inadequate. "I miss your mother" felt intrusive. As I turned back to my shopping, I felt an unexpected flutter in my chest, a connection that seemed both familiar and foreign. My mind raced back to moments shared before tragedy struck, laughter over family dinners, playful banter during movie nights. The warmth of those memories collided violently with the chill of our current reality. Later that evening, as dusk settled over our neighborhood, I decided to sort through some old boxes in the attic. Among dusty photo albums and forgotten trinkets lay a letter addressed to me from my late husband. My heart raced as I unfolded it, his handwriting was unmistakable yet distant. "Dear Luna," it began, a name that had always sounded like music on his lips. "If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer by your side." The words felt heavy as if they carried an unspoken weight. He spoke of love and dreams for our future together but also hinted at things left unsaid between us, feelings buried beneath daily routines and responsibilities. Tears pricked at my eyes as I read on. He expressed concern for Ethan and hoped we would find solace in one another during difficult times. It struck me then, he had recognized something profound about our bond even before he was gone. That night was restless, sleep eluded me as thoughts swirled like leaves caught in a storm. The weight of my emotions pressed against my chest, grief mingled with an inexplicable yearning for connection. The next morning found me at the cafe down the street, nursing a cup of coffee while watching people go about their lives. Ethan walked in just as I took a sip, the bell above the door chimed softly as he entered, his presence commanding attention even amidst chatter and laughter. He looked different somehow, older or perhaps just more burdened than before. Our eyes met briefly before he turned away toward the counter. "Coffee?" he asked without looking up. "Just this," I replied quietly. He ordered something sweet, a pastry laden with frosting, and sat down alone at a table near the window. My heart sank. He seemed so isolated even in public spaces filled with life and joy. I gathered courage and approached him cautiously. "Mind if I join you?" He shrugged slightly but didn't protest. Silence enveloped us like an unwelcome blanket. "I saw you at the market yesterday," I ventured after what felt like an eternity. "Yeah," he muttered absently while picking at his pastry. "I thought maybe we could talk about things." His gaze flickered up briefly before returning to his plate. There was an unspoken tension lingering between us, a heavy charge that neither of us knew how to address. "I don't know what there is to talk about," he finally said softly. I sighed deeply. It was true that words failed us both now more than ever. "Your mother would want us to support each other." At that moment, something shifted in Ethan's expression, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his stoic facade, but just as quickly it vanished again behind walls built from pain and loss. Our conversation faltered again until Ethan abruptly stood up without warning, leaving half-eaten pastries behind as he exited through the cafe door into the bustling street outside. My heart raced as confusion washed over me. Why did it feel so significant when he left? Why did it hurt more than losing him entirely? Days passed after our awkward encounter without any further attempts at communication from either side. An unspoken agreement hung heavily between us like fog rolling over hills on chilly mornings. Yet despite this silence came moments where our paths crossed unexpectedly, brief glances exchanged at community events or hurried nods when passing each other on sidewalks cluttered with autumn leaves painted gold by fading light. It was during one such chance meeting at the annual Harvest Festival that everything changed again. An ordinary day turned extraordinary by unforeseen circumstances lurking just beneath its surface. As laughter erupted around us amidst cheerful music playing from nearby booths selling homemade goods and crafts made by local artisans, there stood Ethan across from me amidst throngs of people enjoying festivities. The distance between us felt electric yet fraught with tension unseen by others around us celebrating life's simple pleasures together under twinkling lights strung overhead illuminating faces filled with joy far removed from ours weighed down by grief still fresh within hearts. Longing for connection lost along paths once traveled hand in hand now fragmented into separate journeys seeking solace apart instead. Before we could speak though fate intervened, someone bumped into him accidentally causing him to spill soda all over himself while simultaneously sending ripples through air thickened with anticipation hanging suspended between us waiting for acknowledgement. He laughed nervously brushing off embarrassment but there lingered beneath surface something deeper waiting patiently for recognition yearning silently among chaos surrounding us both demanding resolution amidst swirling emotions threatening boundaries set long ago. Maybe today would be different? Maybe today would finally break barriers keeping two lost souls apart longing desperately for understanding despite circumstances beyond control shaping lives forever altered by loss. I stood there, frozen in the moment, as the world outside continued its relentless pace. The laughter of children playing nearby and the distant chatter of neighbors faded into an indistinct hum. My heart raced, and I could feel the weight of our shared silence pressing down on us. The guilt that had been lurking in the corners of my mind now surged forward, demanding attention. Maybe we shouldn't, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. His eyes searched mine, reflecting a mix of confusion and longing that mirrored my own. But do you want to? He asked, his tone earnest yet laced with uncertainty. The question hung between us like a fragile thread, ready to snap at any moment. I took a step back, breaking the spell that seemed to have enveloped us. It's complicated, I murmured, turning away to gather my thoughts. Memories flooded back, his mother's laughter echoing in our home, her warmth filling every corner. How could I betray that? Yet here we were, two souls navigating uncharted waters after loss had reshaped our lives. The nights spent alone had become unbearable. It was as if a part of me had been awakened by his presence. I glanced back at him, and for a fleeting second, I saw not just my stepson but a companion who understood my grief. We're not just grieving, he said softly, stepping closer again. We're trying to find our way. His words struck a chord deep within me. Perhaps this connection was born from shared sorrow, a bond forged in the fires of loss. But was it right? Could love bloom amid such darkness? As if sensing my turmoil, he reached out and brushed a stray hair behind my ear, a simple gesture that sent shivers down my spine. I felt warmth spread through me despite the chaos around us. I don't want to lose you, he confessed, his voice low but steady. The honesty in his words caught me off guard. It was true, losing him would be like losing another piece of myself. The thought alone filled me with dread. Before I could respond, he leaned in closer again. Our faces were mere inches apart now. A surge of emotion welled up inside me, desire mingled with fear, and suddenly everything else faded away. In that moment of vulnerability, we kissed. It was brief yet electrifying, a collision of two hearts seeking solace in one another amid their pain. When we pulled back, reality crashed back in like an unwelcome wave. What have we done? I breathed out shakily as panic set in. He looked just as shaken but resolute. We found something real, he replied quietly. Before I could argue or even process what had happened between us, a loud knock echoed through the air behind me, a sound so jarring it felt like thunder on an otherwise calm day. Hello? Is anyone home? A familiar voice called out from the front door, my neighbor Doris, who never missed an opportunity for small talk. My heart raced anew as dread washed over me. How long had she been standing there? What if she had seen us? I think we should go inside, I said hurriedly, glancing at him with wide eyes filled with panic and uncertainty about what might happen next. He nodded slowly but didn't move just yet. Instead, he seemed lost in thought, as if weighing the consequences of our actions against what we'd just shared. The knock came again, more insistent this time, and finally jolted him into motion as he stepped back reluctantly from our secluded spot beneath the trees where so much had unfolded so quickly between us. Let's not discuss this now, he murmured before turning toward the house, while I followed closely behind him like a shadow clinging to its source of light amidst encroaching darkness, threatening to swallow everything whole once again. Doris stood there smiling brightly when we entered, oblivious to anything amiss, as she chatted about her garden and upcoming bake sale at the community center later that week. Her cheerful demeanor felt like salt on an open wound. Every cheerful word reminded me how fragile our secret was becoming under scrutiny from those around us who cared little about complexities hidden beneath surface appearances. Luna, you look lovely today, she exclaimed while eyeing my stepson curiously before continuing with her monologue about daisies blooming early this year or some such nonsense that barely registered amidst swirling thoughts racing through my mind. Thanks, I replied absently while casting furtive glances toward him seated across from me at the kitchen table, the tension palpable between us now more than ever as Doris droned on unaware. Eventually she left after promising to bring over some pastries later. Her departure felt like both relief and disappointment all at once, a strange mixture of emotions swirling within me, leaving no room for clarity or resolution. As soon as we were alone again, silence enveloped us once more, thickly laden with unspoken words lingering heavy in air, charged with unresolved feelings simmering just beneath surface, waiting patiently for release. I'm sorry, he said, finally breaking through stillness hanging heavily around us like fog rolling into town unexpectedly, thickening atmosphere laden with uncertainty hanging over everything. I shook my head slightly, trying to dismiss his apology even though it resonated deeply within me, because truthfully neither one of us should have crossed lines drawn long ago by fate itself. I don't know what this means, I admitted quietly, feeling vulnerable under scrutiny from those unseen forces looming large above us, both threatening consequences neither one dared contemplate, yet knowing full well they were coming. We can figure it out, he replied earnestly, leaning forward slightly across tables separating us physically but not emotionally anymore. The barrier crumbling slowly piece by piece under weighty pressure, building steadily between two hearts yearning desperately for understanding despite circumstances beyond control, shaping lives forever altered by loss. But even as hope flickered somewhere deep inside, flickering dimly against backdrop painted dark shades, regret emerged unbidden, reminding me how precarious this situation truly was. And then came another knock on door, breaking tension once again. This time heavier, somehow more ominous than before, sending shivers coursing down spine, raising hairs on neck, alerting senses heightened, instinctively preparing for whatever awaited beyond threshold, separating worlds colliding unexpectedly. What now? I muttered under breath, feeling dread settle heavily upon shoulders already burdened enough without added complications arising suddenly from nowhere, threatening everything built thus far, unraveling threads holding tightly woven tapestry together, slowly coming undone, piece by piece, revealing raw edges frayed dangerously close, unraveling entirely. He looked at me wide-eyed, uncertainty mirrored clearly across features etched deeply into memory, forever changing landscape once familiar now fraught with danger, lurking just beyond sight, waiting patiently ready spring forth when least expected, catching off guard, leaving nothing untouched. The dim light of the cafe cast long shadows, and the air was thick with the smell of coffee and baked goods. I sat at our usual table, fingers tracing the rim of my cup, heart racing as I awaited him. Each moment stretched into eternity, filled with a mix of anticipation and dread. What if someone saw us? What if our secret slipped out into the open like a loose thread unraveling a carefully knit sweater? He arrived quietly, slipping through the door as if he were afraid to disturb the fragile atmosphere we had created. His eyes scanned the room, landing on me with a blend of relief and apprehension. I offered a small smile, hoping it would ease the tension that hung between us. "Did anyone see you?" I asked, lowering my voice to a whisper. "No," he replied, sliding into the seat across from me. I took the back way. We exchanged glances that spoke volumes, an unspoken understanding that this was both our refuge and our prison. The cafe, with its quaint charm and cozy corners, had become our sanctuary amidst swirling chaos in our lives. "I found something," I said suddenly, pulling out the bracelet I had discovered hidden in my jewelry box earlier that day. It glinted under the soft lighting, a reminder of happier times when life felt less complicated. His eyes widened as he reached for it tentatively. "Where did you get this?" "It was your mother's," I confessed softly. "I didn't know it was still here." He held it carefully between his fingers, lost in thought as memories danced behind his eyes. The weight of shared loss settled heavily upon us both. It was a bond that tethered us together while simultaneously threatening to tear us apart. "I can't believe she kept this," he murmured, tracing its delicate design with reverence. The moment felt charged with emotion, our shared grief mingling with something deeper that neither of us dared to name openly. The cafe buzzed around us, laughter floated from other tables while we sat cloaked in silence, grappling with feelings we barely understood. "Do you ever think about what she would say?" he asked suddenly, breaking through my thoughts. "About us?" I replied cautiously. He nodded slowly. "Would she approve? Or would she be angry?" The question hung heavy in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. I hadn't allowed myself to ponder that possibility fully until now. "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "But we can't keep pretending everything is normal." His gaze met mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "Then what do we do?" I took a deep breath, fear and excitement battled within me as I considered our next steps. "We need to be careful," I said finally. "But, maybe we can meet more often? Find ways to be together without drawing attention." A flicker of hope ignited in his eyes as he nodded slowly. "I'd like that." As we spoke about mundane things, how summer was creeping up on us and plans for local festivals, the underlying tension remained palpable between us like an electric current waiting to spark into flame. Our conversation drifted naturally until it circled back to memories of his mother, her laughter echoing at family gatherings or her gentle reassurances during hard times, and each recollection drew us closer together in ways I could no longer ignore. In an impulsive moment driven by emotion rather than logic, I leaned across the table closer to him. Our lips met softly at first, a tentative brush filled with uncertainty, before deepening as if we were finally surrendering to feelings long buried beneath layers of guilt and fear. We pulled away abruptly when someone entered through the door, a couple laughing loudly as they took their seats nearby, and reality crashed back down upon us like a cold wave washing over warm sand. "What have we done?" I whispered breathlessly, feeling both exhilarated and terrified by what had just transpired between us. "Nothing we can't undo," he replied quickly but not convincingly enough for either of us to believe it entirely. As we resumed talking about trivial matters, the weather forecast for next week or who might win at trivia night, I couldn't shake off an unsettling feeling lingering just beneath the surface like an approaching storm cloud ready to unleash chaos at any moment. Later that evening, after parting ways outside under dim streetlights flickering overhead like stars trying desperately not to fade away into darkness again, I walked home alone, reflecting on everything that had happened since losing him, my husband, and now grappling with feelings toward his son that felt so wrong yet undeniably right all at once. Each step felt heavier than before as dread settled back into place, a reminder of how precarious our situation truly was. What if someone noticed changes in behavior? What if whispers began circulating through town? The next day passed slowly under gray skies heavy with impending rain while anxiety gnawed at me relentlessly. Every glance exchanged between townsfolk felt loaded with suspicion, even though nothing had changed outwardly except for this new secret binding me closer than ever before him. A connection both thrilling yet terrifying, too close for comfort, risking everything familiar crumbling beneath feet, unsteady, unsure where path might lead next. Then came news from mutual friends. A casual mention during lunch about how they'd seen him out late last night looking happy yet different, somehow sparking curiosity among them about what might be happening behind closed doors where no one else could see. Panic surged through me as thoughts spiraled out control, envisioning consequences unfurling before my eyes like dark clouds ready to unleash storm upon unsuspecting town, caught unaware by secrets buried deep within hearts yearning desperately find solace even amidst turmoil raging outside. And then there it was, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching behind me on pavement, echoing louder than heartbeat racing wildly against chest, reminding me just how little time remained before truth inevitably surfaced, forcing decisions made into light, casting shadows long hidden beneath surface, exposing raw edges frayed dangerously close, unraveling entirely. The footsteps grew closer, and I turned to see him standing there, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. The weight of the moment pressed down on me, a reminder of the precarious situation we found ourselves in. I had spent countless hours contemplating the implications of our bond, and now, with him so near, I could hardly breathe. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice tinged with worry. I nodded, though my heart raced with uncertainty. "I just needed some air," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a genuine expression. The truth was far more complex than I dared to admit. We had crossed lines that should have remained untouched, yet here we were, entangled in a web of emotions that neither of us fully understood. As we walked side by side down the quiet street, the familiar sights of our small town blurred into an indistinct backdrop. The vibrant colors of the market stalls seemed muted under the weight of our shared secret. Every corner held memories that tugged at my heartstrings, the laughter we once shared as a family now overshadowed by this new reality. "Do you think anyone suspects?" he asked suddenly, breaking the silence that had settled between us like a thick fog. I hesitated before answering. "Maybe," I said slowly. "But it's not something we can control." The thought sent chills down my spine. What if someone did find out? What would they say? How would they react? The judgment from friends and neighbors would be unbearable. He stopped walking and turned to face me, his eyes searching mine for answers. "I don't want to hide anymore," he confessed quietly. My heart twisted at his words. They echoed my own desires yet carried an undercurrent of fear. "We can't just throw caution to the wind," I replied firmly but gently. "There are people who depend on us." My mind raced back to his late mother, her kindness and warmth, and how she would feel if she knew what was happening now. "I know," he said, frustration lacing his tone. "But it's hard to keep pretending everything is normal when it isn't." He took a step closer, and I could see the turmoil reflected in his gaze, a mix of longing and despair that mirrored my own feelings. In that moment, all reason slipped away as we stood there under the fading light of dusk. Our worlds collided in an instant, emotions boiled over as if they had been waiting for this very moment to break free from their confines. Before I could think better of it, I reached out and touched his arm lightly, a gesture meant to comfort but loaded with unspoken desire. He leaned in slightly as if drawn by an invisible force between us. "We spent the night together," he murmured softly as memories flooded back, the stolen kisses beneath dim lights and whispered confessions shared in shadows where no one could hear us. A sudden burst of laughter from a nearby group startled us back into reality. We quickly stepped apart, each retreating into our own thoughts as shame washed over me like cold water splashing against bare skin. "What are we doing?" I whispered more to myself than him. His brows furrowed in response as if trying to decipher my turmoil. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "But it feels right." The words hung heavily in the air between us, laden with implications neither of us wanted to confront fully yet could not ignore any longer. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a stark reminder of our lives outside this fragile bubble we had created for ourselves. With trembling hands, I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. My stomach dropped at what I saw, an alarming message from my sister-in-law, "We need to talk about you too." A wave of panic surged through me. How had she found out? My pulse quickened as fear gripped me tightly like a vice around my chest. "What is it?" he asked apprehensively as he noticed my sudden change in demeanor. "It's nothing," I stammered quickly, shoving my phone back into my pocket without letting him see what was written there. But even as I spoke those words, doubt gnawed at me relentlessly. If she suspected something was amiss, how long until others did too? "We should go somewhere safe," he suggested tentatively after noticing how pale I had gone. "No," I replied firmly despite feeling torn inside. Part of me craved escape while another part wanted desperately to face whatever storm was brewing ahead together with him by my side. "We can't keep running away from this," he pressed gently but resolutely. I met his gaze head-on for what felt like an eternity before finally nodding slowly in agreement. Perhaps confronting our fears was the only way forward, even if it meant facing potential fallout head-on. As we walked back towards home under fading twilight skies painted with hues of orange and purple blending seamlessly together above us, a symbol perhaps of hope amidst chaos, I couldn't shake off the feeling that change loomed just around every corner waiting patiently for its moment to strike when least expected. With each step closer toward reality looming ahead, my heart pounded louder than ever before echoing ominously within chest reminding me just how fragile everything truly was. As we approached the house, the weight of silence enveloped us. The door creaked slightly as I pushed it open, and I was instantly greeted by the familiar scent of home, one that now felt strangely foreign. My stepson lingered behind me, his presence both comforting and unsettling. The air was thick with unspoken words, each one a reminder of our secret bond, which had grown more complicated with every stolen moment. "Do you think they'll find out?" he asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I paused, the question hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. "I don't know," I replied honestly, feeling the gravity of our situation settle heavily on my shoulders. "But we need to be careful." His gaze dropped to the floor, and for a moment, I could see the conflict swirling within him. We had crossed lines that should never have been crossed. Yet there was an undeniable connection that pulled us together in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. The next few days passed in a blur of mundane activities, a grocery run here, a community event there, but beneath it all lay an undercurrent of tension. Rumors began to circulate around town like wildfire after an old friend of mine visited unexpectedly while I was at the market. Her casual remarks about how close my stepson and I seemed made my stomach churn. "I just saw you two at that cafe again," she said with a knowing smile as we stood among fresh produce and flowers. "You've become quite the pair." I forced a laugh, brushing off her comment as mere small talk. "He's just been helping me out around the house," I replied, hoping to deflect any suspicion. But her eyes sparkled with mischief as she leaned closer. "Well, whatever you're doing seems to be working wonders." She winked before moving on to another aisle. That evening at home felt different, unease settled between us like an unwelcome guest at dinner. As we sat across from each other at the table, pasta steaming between us, I could sense his apprehension mirrored in my own heart. "What did she mean by that?" he asked suddenly, breaking our silence. "Nothing," I replied too quickly, my voice trembling slightly. she was just being friendly. He raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, he pushed his food around on his plate as if it were more interesting than our conversation. The tension thickened until it became almost unbearable. Later that night, while washing dishes, an ordinary chore turned into an act of contemplation. I caught my reflection in the window and thought about how far we had fallen from grace. My late husband's absence loomed large, every decision felt tainted by guilt and longing. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts as he entered the kitchen cautiously. "Can we talk?" His expression was serious but vulnerable. I nodded slowly, leading him to the living room where shadows danced against the walls lit only by a single lamp's glow. The atmosphere crackled with tension as we settled onto opposite ends of the couch. "I've been thinking," he began hesitantly, his hands fidgeting in his lap. "About us, about everything." "What about it?" My heart raced at what might come next. "Do you think this is wrong?" He searched my face for answers that eluded both of us. "Yes," I admitted softly, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "But it doesn't change how I feel." He sighed deeply and leaned back against the cushions as if seeking solace from their embrace rather than from me. "What do we do now? Can we keep pretending everything is normal?" The question hung heavy between us like an uninvited shadow looming over our fragile reality, a reality where love intertwined with guilt created chaos in our hearts. "I don't know," I finally said after what felt like hours of silence passing between us like ships lost at sea without direction or purpose. Just then, my phone buzzed on the coffee table, a stark reminder of our lives outside this cocoon we had created for ourselves. It was a message from my sister-in-law asking about dinner plans for Sunday. Family obligations loomed closer than ever before. "Family dinner this weekend," I murmured distractedly while reading her text aloud to him as if it were some distant warning bell tolling through time itself. His expression darkened momentarily before he masked it with indifference, a skill learned through years of navigating complex family dynamics after loss. "We could skip it." No, the word slipped out before I could rein it back in. I knew how important these gatherings were for everyone involved, even if they sometimes felt suffocatingly traditional amidst our changing lives. A heavy silence fell again until he finally spoke up once more. "What if someone sees us? What if they start talking?" "They already are," I said bluntly but gently. Honesty felt like both a shield and sword in this tangled web we spun together, the truth both liberating yet constraining all at once. The conversation shifted awkwardly towards safer topics, our favorite movies or local news, anything but what lay beneath our surface connection that threatened to fracture under scrutiny or judgment from those who couldn't understand what bound us together so tightly despite societal expectations pulling us apart instead. As midnight approached and exhaustion began creeping into our bones like frost settling on leaves during autumn nights spent reminiscing over lost loves long gone, the doorbell rang unexpectedly, jolting me upright from where I sat curled up beside him on that worn-out couch filled with memories haunting every corner. "Who could that be?" I whispered nervously, glancing toward him while uncertainty twisted inside me like vines wrapping around fragile branches struggling against strong winds threatening to break them all together. "It's late," he murmured almost instinctively, rising up off his seat heading toward front door without waiting for me respond further, but not before casting one last glance back over shoulder filled with apprehension mixed equal parts curiosity. The sound echoed through empty halls, accompanied only by muted whispers shared between two souls caught within turmoil battling against forces beyond their control. It felt surreal watching him disappear behind closed doors into unknown territory where anything could happen next. Moments passed slowly until finally footsteps returned, accompanied by another voice, a familiar one laced with urgency. "Luna, you need to come out here." My heart dropped as dread washed over me like cold water cascading down rocky cliffs, plunging deep below into dark waters, swirling chaotically around unseen depths, waiting patiently beneath surface, waiting patiently for something significant enough rise above tides, crashing relentlessly against shores. "What's going on?" My pulse quickened, instinctively sensing danger lurking just beyond reach, yet still hidden away from prying eyes searching desperately for answers never meant be found. "It's about your husband." And suddenly everything shifted irrevocably forevermore, leaving me standing frozen amidst shifting sands where once stood solid ground, now crumbling beneath weight, burdened by choices made along paths less traveled, leading straight toward uncertain futures filled trepidation, but also possibility. The family gathering loomed before us like a storm cloud, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I stood in the kitchen, the scent of roasted chicken mixing with the aroma of freshly baked bread, trying to focus on mundane tasks. The clatter of dishes and the laughter of relatives echoed around me, but my mind was elsewhere, tangled in thoughts of him. "Luna, can you help me with this?" My sister-in-law's voice pulled me back to reality. She was struggling with a salad bowl that seemed determined to escape her grasp. I nodded absently, forcing a smile as I moved to assist her. As I tossed greens into the bowl, I caught sight of him across the room. He was laughing with his cousins, his eyes sparkling with a youthful energy that contrasted sharply with my own internal turmoil. The sight sent a jolt through me, a reminder of our shared moments and the weight of our secret. "Are you all right?" my sister-in-law asked, concern etching her features as she studied me closely. "Just tired," I replied, avoiding her gaze. The truth was far more complicated than that. The evening wore on, filled with small talk and family anecdotes that felt increasingly distant from my reality. The tension between us simmered just below the surface. We exchanged glances that spoke volumes while others remained blissfully unaware. Then came the moment when everything shifted again, a miscommunication that spiraled out of control. As we gathered for dinner, someone jokingly brought up his job offer that had surfaced weeks ago. "You're not really considering moving away, are you?" one cousin asked, laughter in their voice. His expression faltered for just a heartbeat before he replied casually, "I'm not sure yet." But I could see it, the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes mirrored my own apprehensions about what his departure would mean for us. The conversation continued around us, but I felt as though we were encased in glass, isolated from the world while everything else blurred into background noise. My heart raced at the thought of him leaving this small town and our secret behind. After dinner, we found ourselves alone in the living room as family members dispersed to different corners of the house. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed tightly over his chest as if bracing against an unseen force. "Did you hear what they said?" His voice was low but intense. "Yes," I replied softly. "But it doesn't have to mean anything." He pushed off the wall and stepped closer to me, urgency radiating from him. "It feels like it does, though." His eyes searched mine for answers I wasn't sure how to provide. "Maybe we shouldn't have gotten involved," I murmured, guilt gnawing at my insides like a relentless tide eroding sandcastles built too close to shore. "What are you saying?" His tone shifted from urgency to confusion. "I'm saying, maybe it's time we stop pretending," I said carefully, weighing each word as if they were fragile glass ornaments poised on a precarious ledge. He stepped back slightly as if my words had struck him physically. "So that's it? We just end this?" "No." Panic flared within me at his reaction. "I don't want to end it, I just need time to think." "I can't think about anything else," he replied sharply before turning away from me abruptly. The distance between us felt insurmountable, a chasm formed by fear and uncertainty that threatened to swallow us whole. Just then, another family member entered the room with an armful of decorations for an upcoming holiday event, an innocent interruption but one that underscored our precarious situation. As they chatted about plans for next week's festival, my heart sank further into despair. How could we navigate this tangled web? How could we balance our feelings against familial expectations? Later that night, after everyone had left and silence settled over the house like a heavy blanket, I sat alone in my dimly lit living room replaying our earlier conversation over and over again in my mind. The flickering candlelight cast shadows on the walls, shadows that mirrored my own doubts about where this relationship could lead. Just then, there was a knock at the door, soft but insistent enough to pull me from my reverie. My heart raced as dread settled into my stomach. Who could it be at this hour? I opened it cautiously to find him standing there under the porch light, his expression serious yet vulnerable in a way that made breath catch in my throat. "We need to talk," he said simply before stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "What is it?" My voice trembled slightly despite my efforts to remain composed. He closed the door behind him and turned toward me fully. Determination etched across his features made my pulse quicken even more than before. "I've been offered a job, far away." A lump formed in my throat as I processed his words, the implications crashing down upon me like waves against jagged rocks. "When do you leave?" "A few weeks," he replied quietly but firmly. "What does this mean for us?" The question hung heavily between us like an uninvited specter intruding upon our fragile connection. "I don't know," he admitted honestly, vulnerability stripped bare before me revealed layers beneath his bravado, the boyish charm now tinged with uncertainty about what lay ahead for both of us. An uncomfortable silence enveloped us until finally he spoke again. "But whatever happens, I don't want this to end." His admission sent shockwaves through me. Hope mingled dangerously with fear as possibilities unfurled within reach yet felt so very far away at once, a bittersweet paradox echoing through every moment spent together thus far. "But how can we make this work?" My voice barely rose above a whisper. Desperation seeped into each syllable laced with longing and uncertainty alike. The future looming ahead shrouded in darkness yet illuminated by fleeting moments shared beneath starlit skies filled dreams unfulfilled still waiting patiently somewhere beyond grasp. "I'll figure something out." His resolve sparked something deep within me, a flicker igniting amidst shadows threatening encroachment upon everything sacred between us. A promise lingering unvoiced yet palpable within charged air surrounding two souls intertwined against all odds facing inevitable change looming ahead. And just like that, the door swung wide open revealing paths diverging toward unknown futures stretching infinitely ahead beckoning both toward choices demanding resolution amidst chaos swirling around them threatening collapse. The weight of the moment pressed heavily upon us, an unyielding force that threatened to reshape everything we had come to know. I could see the conflict in his eyes, a storm brewing beneath the surface as he considered the job offer. It was a lifeline for him, a chance to escape the tangled web of our circumstances. Yet, it also meant leaving behind what had become our fragile connection. "Maybe it's for the best," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't keep doing this." The words hung in the air like a shroud, suffocating and raw. "But what about us?" I countered, my heart racing at the thought of losing him. "What does that mean for everything we've shared?" He looked away, staring out into the fading light of dusk that seeped through the cafe windows. The shadows danced around us, mirroring our internal turmoil. The cafe had been our sanctuary, where laughter mingled with whispered confessions, but now it felt like an altar of sacrifice. "I don't know," he replied finally, his voice thick with emotion. "I just know I can't stay here and pretend anymore." The truth stung more than I anticipated. The complexities of our relationship loomed larger than life itself, each moment spent together now tinged with uncertainty and regret. I had thought we could navigate this storm together, instead, we were drifting further apart. Our conversation was interrupted by the bell above the door jingling, a familiar sound that usually brought warmth but now sent a chill down my spine. It was my sister-in-law, Mary. Her presence felt like an intrusion into our fragile world. "Luna. There you are," she exclaimed brightly as she approached our table. "I've been looking for you everywhere." Her smile faltered slightly when she noticed my stepson's tense demeanor. "Hi Mary," I managed to say while forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "What are you two up to?" she asked innocently enough, but her gaze flickered between us with curiosity. My heart raced as I exchanged glances with my stepson. Had she sensed something? Was there suspicion lurking behind her friendly facade? "Just catching up," he replied too quickly, his tone clipped as if trying to distance himself from whatever unspoken tension lingered in the air. Mary's brow furrowed slightly before she continued chatting about mundane things, the upcoming town festival and how much work it would take to prepare for it. But her words felt hollow against the backdrop of our reality. Every laugh and smile felt forced as we sat there pretending everything was normal when it was anything but. As she talked on about trivialities, my mind wandered back to that bracelet, the one I had found tucked away in his mother's belongings just days after her passing. A simple silver band adorned with delicate engravings that spoke of love and commitment, it haunted me still, a reminder of what once was and what could never be again. In that moment, I understood something profound. This job offer wasn't just an opportunity for him, it represented an escape from all this, the guilt, the fear, and perhaps even me. As Mary continued her chatter about festival preparations, I felt a pang of desperation rise within me. When she finally left us alone again after what felt like hours, silence enveloped us like a heavy blanket suffocating any remaining hope between us. "What if you take it?" I asked tentatively, my voice barely above a whisper as dread pooled in my stomach at the thought of him leaving town, and me, behind. "I don't want to hurt you," he said softly but firmly. "But staying here, it feels impossible." The truth settled heavily between us, a stark acknowledgement that this might be our last moment together in this space where secrets thrived and affection bloomed against all odds. "Maybe we need time apart," I suggested hesitantly, each word felt like pulling teeth but necessary nonetheless. He nodded slowly as if weighing every word before responding. "Maybe you're right." The bitterness of those words cut deeper than any knife could, an acceptance that neither of us wanted but couldn't avoid anymore. This relationship had flourished under shadows and whispers, now it stood exposed under harsh light threatening to unravel everything we held dear. As night fell outside the cafe window casting long shadows across our table where laughter once echoed freely among friends and family alike, I knew something had irrevocably changed between us. Then came another interruption, this time from Mary again, who returned with urgency etched across her features as if bearing news too heavy to hold alone. "Luna," she called out breathlessly as she approached once more, her face pale against the warm glow of cafe lights illuminating her anxious expression beneath dark curls framing concerned eyes filled with worry rather than joy or warmth typically associated with family gatherings or celebrations ahead. "I need to talk to you. It's about your stepson." My heart sank at those words, a premonition coursing through me like ice water flooding veins while dread coiled tightly around every thought racing through my mind in rapid succession. What did she know? What had happened? His expression mirrored mine, anxiety etched deeply into those familiar features now twisted into something almost unrecognizable under pressure threatening everything we built together amidst chaos surrounding loss and longing. "Is everything all right?" he asked cautiously despite knowing full well nothing ever truly remained all right for long within these walls where secrets festered beneath layers upon layers waiting patiently until ready to reveal themselves at last. Mary hesitated before continuing, the weight of whatever revelation loomed heavy upon her tongue threatening release yet holding back until ready. "It's about your mother. Something has come up." My breath caught in my throat, every instinct screamed at me not to ask further questions yet curiosity clawed viciously demanding answers despite knowing they might shatter whatever fragile piece remained intact between us. "What do you mean?" My voice trembled slightly, it felt wrong even asking yet necessary nonetheless amidst uncertainty swirling around us both threatening collapse once more. "There are things she never told anyone," Mary began slowly while glancing nervously toward my stepson who sat frozen beside me awaiting answers he perhaps feared hearing most. And just like that, the ground shifted beneath our feet, leaving me grasping desperately at straws, trying desperately not only hold on to him, but also hold on to hope amid spiraling chaos, unraveling everything around us, threatening collapse once more. Mary's words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. I could see the tension etched on my stepson's face, a mix of fear and anticipation as he awaited the revelations that could shatter our already fragile world. "What do you mean?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your mother, she had secrets," Mary replied, her gaze darting away from us. "Things that could change how you see everything." I felt a chill creep up my spine. The weight of her words pressed down on me like a thick fog. What more could there be? After all we had faced together, the grief, the guilt, and the bond we had forged in the shadows, was there still something lurking beneath the surface that could tear us apart? "Secrets?" my stepson echoed, confusion knitting his brows together. "What kind of secrets?" Mary hesitated, wringing her hands as if they were tied together by invisible strings. She was involved in things she never shared with anyone. "What are you talking about?" I interjected, my heart racing. "This isn't helping." "I'm sorry," she said softly, looking genuinely remorseful. "But it's important, you know." As I glanced at my stepson, I noticed a flicker of anger flash across his face before it melted into despair. He looked so much like his mother in that moment, conflicted and lost. "Just tell us," he urged, desperation creeping into his tone. Mary took a deep breath, steadying herself before continuing. "Your mother was part of something bigger than we realized, a community group that worked to help families like ours after loss." She paused again, searching for the right words. "But there were also rumors, things she might have done to protect you." "What kind of rumors?" I asked sharply, feeling my chest tighten. "Some said she was involved with someone else," Mary admitted reluctantly. The revelation struck me like a physical blow. "No," my stepson whispered in disbelief. "Yes," Mary pressed on gently but firmly. "She wanted to keep you safe and thought this was the way." The room fell silent as we processed this new reality. His mother had hidden parts of her life from us both. My heart sank further as I realized how little we truly knew each other. "What does this mean for us?" he finally asked, his voice trembling. I took a step closer to him instinctively, an urge to comfort him surged within me despite everything we'd navigated together, the boundaries we'd crossed and the feelings that had grown between us like wildflowers through cracks in concrete. "I don't know," I admitted softly. Mary shifted uncomfortably before speaking again. "You need to decide what matters most now, your future or your past." As those words settled heavily between us, an unsettling thought crept into my mind. Could this revelation push us apart when we had only just begun to find solace in each other? Suddenly, a loud knock at the door broke through our tense silence, a sharp reminder that our secret world was still very much intertwined with reality outside these walls. "I'll get it," I said quickly, moving toward the door while stealing glances back at them both, my stepson's face pale and Mary's expression unreadable. When I opened the door, a familiar figure stood there, an old friend from town who hadn't visited since before everything changed. Her eyes widened slightly at seeing me but quickly turned serious as if sensing something was amiss. "Sorry to barge in like this," she said apologetically but didn't hesitate to step inside once invited. "What's going on?" I asked cautiously as she glanced around nervously before meeting my gaze directly. "There are whispers going around town," she began hesitantly. My heart raced again. Community gossip often shaped perceptions more than any truth ever could. "What kind of whispers?" She hesitated again before continuing slowly. "People are starting to talk about you and your stepson, about how close you've become since your husband passed." My stomach dropped at her words. It felt like time froze for an agonizing moment as dread pooled within me like ink spreading across paper. We're just grieving together, I insisted defensively, even though deep down I knew our bond stretched beyond simple mourning. It had morphed into something far more complicated than either of us could articulate without risking everything. I understand, she replied gently but firmly, shaking her head slightly as if trying to convey concern rather than judgment. But you need to be careful, people love stories here, and they love scandal even more. I appreciate your concern, I managed finally after swallowing hard against rising panic threatening to spill over into chaos once more, but what could be done? How could we hide when every glance exchanged felt like an open declaration? As she moved toward the exit after assuring me she wouldn't spread anything further without proof, her footsteps echoed ominously against wooden floors. I turned back toward Mary and my stepson, who remained locked in their own conversation, now tinged with uncertainty following this unexpected interruption. We can't let them dictate our lives, my stepson said firmly while looking straight at me with determination shining through those troubled eyes, a flicker of hope amidst looming shadows stretching longer by each passing moment, threatening collapse once more. You're right, I replied resolutely despite feeling fear gnawing at every corner of my mind. But what did right even mean anymore? In that moment filled with unspoken promises and lingering doubts swirling around us, I knew nothing would ever be simple again. Decisions loomed ahead demanding clarity yet clouded by emotion tangled intricately among family ties fraying under pressure. We stepped outside together into fading daylight where whispers faded behind closed doors, but uncertainty loomed larger than ever before readying itself for whatever consequences awaited beyond our fragile cocoon built upon shared grief and newfound affection. As darkness enveloped us slowly under night sky filled with stars twinkling above, a reminder that light often coexisted alongside shadows, we faced forward ready or not for whatever came next.